We're about to start.
I guess we have to put a word.
I ain't getting you. I got to
Yeah.
my gas station.
The clock in the back is 2 minutes behind.
No, I saw that. You got that.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Community Services and Land Use Committee. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Do you concur, Ms. Brock? Thank you. We have, Dawson made the motion and it was seconded by.
I second it.
You seconded?
Yeah.
Okay, by Ms. Tabernet. All right. Without objection, the amended agenda is approved. All right, we have the minutes from September 11th. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? All right, Councilman Cunningham made the motion. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
And without objection, the minutes from September 11th are approved. At this time, we will take citizen comments for a total of, do we have any citizen comments? Yes, there's one. Okay, and I will remind the public decorum in speaking. When speaking, each member shall address the chairman, avoid disrespect to the council, and any personalities confine themselves to the question or the comments, and we have a 3-minute limit at the time, okay? We have Mr. Dennis Ross. And if you'll come forward and state your name and your address. And which subject?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So Dennis Ross, live on 13 Ridge Road in Ladies Island, and the subject is a moratorium. So Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to speak to you about the positive impact of Beaufort County considering a moratorium ordinance on new construction and limiting upzoning to better serve the existing citizens of Beaufort. County is currently struggling with overcrowded schools, a stressed infrastructure, and deteriorating natural habitats because of unchecked growth. In a study done by the Municipal Association of South Carolina, they stated that South Carolina is growing fast, and they recognize that in parts of the state, growth is happening far too quickly. They also state that a moratorium on new building construction can be a useful tool to pause the pressures of a new development. This pause does not come without risk of possible annexations or the associated tax implications, but I feel, as do many others, that it's a risk worth taking. A prime concern of many is the school system. Fortunately, the bond referendum was passed and is the first step in helping our already overcrowded schools. But this, too, is only a stopgap measure, if not timed correctly. A colleague of mine that is involved in community planning found that in Oldham County, Kentucky, there was a similar issue with overdevelopment. The county decided upon a regulation that would require, in many cases, that developers phase in their projects by capping the number of dwelling units that can be constructed each calendar year as a means of mitigating the development's impacts and allowing school board adequate time to plan for growth. To the maximum extent practical, approval of new residential development should be granted by the county council with the planning commission's recommendation only when it can reasonably be expected that adequate public school facilities will be available to accommodate such new development. This is just one example of what can be done to retard the pace of growth. As you know, Jasper County recently enacted a moratorium and has found that it can be a daunting challenge if the county doesn't act promptly to implement changes based on aggregate research and the timely implementing of those changes to the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan. Time is of the essence when a moratorium is enacted. I realize that a task force within the county has been established, and they're exploring and possibly recommending action for a way that the roads, the schools, and the environment keep pace with this already explosive growth. Much more forethought needs to be given to lessen the impact developers make on the county's current residents. We can't begin well-timed smart growth until we first tackle our current infrastructure and its limitations with positive, insightful thinking and pragmatic leadership. Please consider bringing a moratorium or placing a hold on upzoning properties to your fellow council members. Smart growth protects the long-term history, beauty, and natural resources that defines Beaufort County.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ross. All right, next on the agenda is the update from the Assistant County Administrators, Mr. Atkinson and Ms. Anatoly Ogden, who, you're going to go first?
It's a mouthful. Yes,
I
ma'am.
know.
Good
ma'am.
afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. As you may all recall, in July of this year, a new director for the Veterans Affairs Office was appointed, Caroline Furman, and I have asked her to give an update of the department for you this afternoon.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Furman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of committee, thank you for having me here today. I'd like to thank the county first and foremost for their unwavering support of the Veterans Affairs Office, especially Audra. I mean, she's been a pillar of support, and also Laura Finelli out of the communications section. She's probably transmitted 2 to 3 press releases a week since I started. Plus her staff, Chloe, has done a lot of my graphic artist work. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my staff, Mr. John Abney and Miss Virginia McGowan. This is Veterans Affairs, and while I brought on Mr. Abney on the 1st of August, she pretty much carried down the entire fort for a couple months until we got accredited. So much kudos to both of them, but especially Ann. Last week, as you know, we had the partnership with the Wreaths Across America Beaufort, and over 100 participants came in and viewed that exhibit. We also had the Veterans Day Parade, and one of the great takeaways from that is we went from 17 participants to over 33 this year. So we had a much greater turnout despite the weather. In the last couple of months, I've stood up a Beaufort County Veterans Advisory Council and a Beaufort County Veterans Administration Council. And the read-aheads that I provided, it describes what each of those are. But one is like the graybeards in the military. They advise and mentor, my office on all things veteran and military. And then the Veterans Affairs Council is a group of anyone who touches veterans in Beaufort County. We get together quarterly just to share information, events, and collaborate on ways that we can support our veterans. Also in that time, I've implemented this new battle rhythm where every Wednesday we are across the county. And I can tell you a little story. I had a client come in and he couldn't open his phone. I said, well, I think you should just put your face in it. He goes, no, I had to borrow a phone and borrow a car to get here. So it made me think, we've got a very large county. So the first Tuesday of the month, we're going to Hilton Head. The second is Sun City. The third is Bluffton. We also, by on demand, go to Labico, St. Helena, and Beaufort to meet those veterans where they are. We plan to incorporate MCAS, MCRD, and the Naval Hospital into that rhythm to help those veterans, those military that are transitioning with their BDD claims. I've also implemented an end-of-life planning with our aged population. We've noticed a spike in folks coming in for death benefits and a DIC, what we call DIC, Dependent Indemnity Compensation. So we created a brief that helps identify and explain the benefits that they may be entitled to. We've held 2 of them in Sun City. We had over 100 participants. Very, very welcomed. And so we're going to incorporate that into north and south of the Broad, 1 per quarter, north and 1 in the south. We've partnered with the South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs with the Palmetto Pathfinders Program, the Combined Arms Coalition, and the Low Country Rural Veteran Engagement Team. And I've explained what those things are in the read ahead, but these are other ways, especially the rural part, is to get out into those areas in Beaufort County where there's veterans who may not know that we exist or what we can provide. So by reaching out with ministers, South Carolina Works, social workers, you know, the VA, Ralph H. Johnson, we can reach some of those rural vets and get them into the fold. And the read ahead, I did mention that we've got 24,000 vets. South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs has estimated that 70% of the veterans in South Carolina are untethered to the VA. So what does that mean? They're not receiving benefits for whatever reason. So, you know, my target is about 40,000 folks that still could use assistance. And that's our aim, is to find them and to get them that assistance. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was the storage and accountability of the DD-214s. We're in the process of taking that over from the county. So, you know, we'll be working with the IT to get some secure server space so that we can, you know, store and then retrieve those DD-214s. Barring any.
Will you tell this group what that is? the
I'm
DD?
sorry. So a DD-214 is when you separate from active service, the military gives you what's called a Department of Defense Form 214, and that's your characterization of service. It's got your awards and medals that you rate. It has your re-enlistment code, the rank that you retired at or are separated with, and it's basically the form that identifies you know, what you're entitled to in terms of any type of future benefit. Thank you. Sorry, ma'am.
Okay, let me open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment. I want to thank you for coming to Sun City. It was a great turnout. The veterans raved about the
Oh,
session.
thank you.
So thank you for doing that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Tom, go ahead first.
When's your next time on Hilton Head?
We are Hilton Head on the first Wednesday of the month, so it'll be the first week of December. And we're in the county office on Hilton
On
Head.
278 there.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
And then in Bluffton, we're at the county office. I'm sorry, we're at the library.
Okay.
And then in Sun City, we're at the lake house. And then for
Thank
Lebico and St. Helena, we're at the libraries.
Okay. Councilman Glover, you had a question?
No,
Yes, Madam Chairman?
Oh,
Madam,
yes.
Go ahead, I'll go after that.
Go ahead, Councilman Collins. Go ahead. Go ahead.
hi, Carolyn. I just wanted to congratulate you on taking the job. I'm very happy that you're there. You bring a great deal of knowledge and dignity to the position, and I'm confident that the program will grow and prosper under your direction. So good luck, and if there's anything that I can do, I would appreciate you just picking up the phone and giving me a call, and we'll have a chat.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilman Glover?
I'm going to echo what Mr. McCullum just said a few minutes ago, so I'm going to say the same thing. If there's anything I can do, let me know. I would tell you that you stole a good competitive bowler, in Mr. Abner. We miss him at the bowling senior league, but you got a good man there, and whatever you can do. We talk about economic development a lot. I would say this, that the more benefits you can get for our veterans, the more boost we'll have for our local economy as well. So do all you can. I would say this, that I know of a veteran who finally got his benefits, but it took him years to do. And a lot of time, people just give up on
Well, we're going to
federal
fix
government.
that, sir. We're fixing that. And that statistic that you mentioned, with the 24,000 vets in Beaufort County, they bring in about $179 million direct and indirect payment. And that's economic, I mean, that's economic, you know, powerhouse for Beaufort County.
How-
Because they're living here and they're spending their money here. So the more benefits that we can get our veterans, the ones that they rate and they deserve, then that returns back to us as a community.
Yes.
Any other
Thank you.
comments, questions? Well, you've done some great things in a short period of time, and we wish your very large office the best success.
Well, if there's anything we can do for you, I've left my card. If you have any constituents that need any help, please refer them to us and we will take care of them.
And thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Mr. Atkins, update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. So we have two updates for you. Mr. Mark Davis, who is our Deputy Planning Director, is going to give an update on our green space program. And Mr. Rob Merchant, who is our planning director, after Mark concludes his presentation, is going to give an update on the Ladies Island plan and where we are with that. So with that, I introduce Mr. Mark Davis. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to quickly, or try to do it as quick as possible, respect time. We're going to go back a little bit in time, and then we're going to move forward on some of the work that we've done, and then I'm going to kind of give you an update on some of the dates we have moving forward in the process that we've had as associated to the staff's work and the Green Space Advisories Committee work. So the first slide here, that is what you all were involved in to kind of understand the dates of September 25th when you all gave the program criteria and application process third reading. From that date, just gonna scroll down one. Perfect. From that following day, staff immediately started taking requests for pre-application meetings starting September 26th. So this is a slide that's going to kind of capture a lot of information, but I'll try to get through it quickly, just kind of understand dates of the program and kind of simplify it. Is that the program requires a pre-application meeting. That pre-application meeting must occur 15 days prior to an application deadline. The application deadline for this quarter was October 31st. So you can see we had about a 15-day window there to kind of fit those in. The deadline has passed. Staff is currently going through what we call our application completeness check, and that is the middle box there. And we have 10 days, and then after we do that, we notify applicants about their application. They then have 10 days to rectify any deficiencies in their application and provide that back to staff. After we've gone through that, we then take those complete applications, and that's what makes a Green Space Advisory Committee quarterly meeting agenda. That meeting has been scheduled for December 6th, and we will be advancing, as of right now, at least 3 applications. We have 3 completes, and we anticipate maybe a 4th, but there could be a 5th. And at that meeting, staff and the Green Space Advisory Committee will review those applications, weigh them against the adopted program, and simply make a recommendation to this committee whether or not it should further be considered and due diligence be considered for the expenditure and the timeframes associated to that to kind of look into the applications that we have received. So I want to speak a little bit about the applications. So staff, and my joke is people will be eating ice cream tonight. So staff and the Green Space Advisory Committee meeting, instead of just coming up with one application type, capture everything, which I would call a vanilla flavor, we decided to create multiple application types to capture all the variety that different types of procurements require. So we created 6 application types, and as you can see, we have a conservation easement application type. That's pretty standard. We have a fee simple purchases application type. We have a farmland preservations application type, natural scenic wildlife corridors application type, an existing plan development and development agreement buy down application type, and then we have one that's called an other. That's kind of like the outlier, kind of captures other things that those, what we call the first 5 or what we call the focused program procurements that the program is specifically focused on, but we decided that it could still open up some opportunity, and that's where the other comes in. In addition to that, because this program does allow for applications outside our geographic boundaries, we have, if you have an application that is outside Beaufort County's geographic boundaries, and I want to make sure everybody understands that, that's beyond municipalities within our county. That is outside our county. It requires an additional application addendum that gets layered on top of the application that kind of beefs it up some and puts the applicant kind of in understanding there's a different process to that. I do have an example of what some of the applications look like. I'm trying to move through this, but If anybody has any questions on that or what we've done so far, I'll take those before we, yeah, okay.
Just a quick question, when, on an outside county boundary application comes forward, is my understanding that, funding from the outside also has to come with it as well?
Correct.
Okay, and that funding does not necessarily has to be from the county, it could be from other sources, right?
Correct.
Okay, I wanna make sure.
And it's a high mark.
I
It's
got
the
you.
highest.
I got you?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So here's an example of one of the application types. So this is the conservation easement. I figured I'd use this one as example because it's the most common one that we use oftentimes. So this is what people have received, and this is what they're filling out. You can see it's very detailed. We work through this, staff work through this, and all of these application types that you saw were adopted by the Green Space Advisory Committee. So staff worked on them, took them to the committee, we evaluated them, we worked through them, and they officially adopted them. So you can see they're, you know, pretty user-friendly on the eyes, well-organized. It's a combination of some questions, and these were to kind of capture all the nuances that might exist. And then we have a notice to applicant, we have a disclaimer. That notice to applicant would be in the out-of-county one, and I do have that addendum if you would like to see that as well. This kind of captures some of the requirements of the program for each application type. That notice to applicant changes based on the application type. That disclaimer, however, stays the same. And then each application type has a set of questions tailored specifically to that type of procurement. So questions for a conservation easement will be significantly different than questions you might find for an existing plan development buy down. Conservation easements are usually pretty simple, so these questions were, you know, not very difficult in nature. Want to go to the next one? So this is the out-of-county application addendum. And you'll see it's very short and sweet, but it pretty much puts all applicants on notice, letting them know that there's a different process. There's a much higher level, what we would call partnership contribution requirement, a much higher threshold. And it kind of works through more or less, basically, it's kind of a legal document in a way, just that when they sign that, they realize that this is a different process and this will be processed in a different way than anything that we receive inside the county. And that's what we use. That's what we use to supplement all the application types, instead of creating one for outside the county,
I
because
think
there could.
Councilman Kellen, do you have a question? No, no, okay. He put
Let me
himself
just
on
ask a
mute.
question, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman.
Yes,
Explain to me in dollars amount, and you can use $10 or $100, but what is a 300% match?
A lot.
300%.
So, yeah,
Okay, I just wanted, I thought so.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear, yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, basically, as you can see, so what the program does is that any application, that's the minimum too. If you go back to that application type, it'll say that this is the minimum, that the Green Space Advisory Committee as well as County Council has the right to make it even more if they want. So these are all minimums that we capture, and a lot of that notice to applicant language you saw that they have to initial puts them on notice that it could become more as this stuff becomes more evaluated. You know, it's kind of a two-step process, is that initial.
Match, that 300% could be kind of problematic, wouldn't it?
If it was outside the county?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Huh?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's problematic. If it's problematic, if you look at bullet point 2, I called that the carrot, but if other local jurisdictions and counties adopt a green space or a green belt program, then we can partner with them at a lower threshold. But if they're not going to do that, that 300% match will always be there.
And I think Mr. Atkinson might want
I just
to
want to help
share
clarify.
something.
Great job, by the way. So the in-kind match, for every dollar the county or green space puts in, there has to be a threefold match. So $1, $3. $4 would be the total price. But that $3 can be an in-kind match. There are a lot of different avenues that you can get to that $3. It's not just cash. So I don't know, we may want to do a workshop to get into the ordinance, walk through all of the policies and all of the adopted procedures. It gets real complicated, but that's sort of the nuts and bolts. When you're outside of the county, it's 1 to 3, that's the 300% match. But when you get in kind, it can be the value of the property can offset that. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It can be
State and federal
acreage.
money.
It can be outside entities' money. It could be philanthropy money. There's a lot of sources for that. So I hope that helps.
So ways to get there.
Yes,
A
ma'am.
multitude of ways to get there.
And any match falls in that same category. We have a lot of options to get there. Yes,
Do you
sir.
have more slides too, or?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, questions. Councilman
I don't know
Cunningham.
if it's a question or a statement, maybe both, but, so I know when we first started this process, our goal was to quadruple our funding, not with the taxpayers' funding. This is one of the processes to do that, that the board's put in. So like, why we're requiring the match is to take our tax dollars further. It's not just gonna be on the burden of the county, but if the state wants to protect this area as much as we do, other people are gonna have to put some skin in the game, the municipalities, the state, the federal government, other grant services, but that funding can come from all those different locations for us to be able to quadruple this money that we're pulling in from the taxpayers.
That's exactly how it's structured.
Chairman Passman, do you have a question?
No.
Comment?
Ms. Howard? Chairman?
Yes.
Could you just remind us how much money's in the Green Space Bank right now? Because I know we're in the middle of a quarter, but what we've collected already?
Um,
Because I forgot already.
It's a-
And look,
it's a
he's
lot.
got it.
I will
Yeah.
give you the, I actually had it on my notes in my phone here. I knew
Okay,
somebody was going
good.
to ask that. So as of October the 12th, which was the last deposit, there was 18.33 million. The post dates, and I'm going to go through them individually, was July 17th was a deposit of 5.44 million. August 25th was 6.31 million. And then 10/12 is 6.58 million. And either it has already happened or will just about, will soon happen. We'll get the November drop, which will probably be a little less because we're out of tourist season. But that's where we are right now, and that's sort of the trend.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we go? And we probably should have a workshop
I
closer to
agree.
when we're reviewing that, when we get, as county council, get the applications. to
Yes,
consider.
absolutely.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Cunningham.
At this point next year, would we be able to get a breakdown of, like you just did with the monthly, but actual percentage of what we're projecting came from tourists, so we can actually give back to the public? When we advocated for this, we talked about how a lot of this funding is gonna come from tourists, like how you saw that spike during that time. Because next year is gonna be that first full year of having this process in order. Is there
Yes.
a way we could do that for the funding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And maybe even by municipality, well, maybe not.
Sure. I don't know how it's broken out. We get with the state, I get with our finance folks. However it's broken out, we'll give you as much detail as we have. Obviously, we're going to give you quarterly updates of where we are.
Right.
Because that's how the process runs. So every time we have a quarter, we're going to come tell you what we've done. And you're going to see all the projects come forward for due diligence and for any expenditure of money. So we will keep you well informed, and we'll give you all the information that we have on it.
Any other updates? Do you want to, at this time, talk about the one item that we had in case there's people in the audience that came here because they thought we were going to be talking about Malin Bluff?
Sure. So there was a typographical error in the actual ordinance of, I think it was item 11 on the agenda. It's a rezoning. It said Malin Bluff. That was incorrect. We, actually, Councilmember Chairman Howard caught it Saturday morning. Really appreciate you doing that. And we got to work, fixed that typographical error, changed the online backup, and it is corrected now. It was in one of the whereases. It just made a reference. It was a cut and paste error from a previous rezoning request, and that has been corrected. So,
And I don't know if anyone's here for that, but I just wanted to let them know.
yeah, and you all have our apologies for that, so.
Mr. Chairman, just one
Yes.
question. When is the Malin Bluff going to be back on the agenda? Do you have that scheduled?
So the Malin, I do not. I don't know when that one's coming back, but I can get that information for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other updates? Any other updates?
Yeah, so
Your-
Mr. Merchant's going to come talk about the Ladies Island Plan very quickly, and that'll conclude our division's report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is how we're doing. Okay.
Good afternoon. So just a quick update on Ladies Island. I think at the last meeting, I had mentioned that we reached out to the city. We were in the process of hearing back from them. Well, I have good news to report that we met with the city, with their town manager and several members of council. I thought it was a good meeting. We talked about the best steps forward to develop a scope. And so what they agreed to do was for us to put together a staff working group. And so we have our staff working with our engineering department, with the city's planning department, and with the town of Port Royal. And so we've had 2 meetings so far. We actually met this morning, and it seems to be going pretty well. We're kind of looking at, what steps are necessary, how to really make this a holistic plan. What we're seeing is that there is a significant transportation portion of this because we have some unresolved issues on Sea Island Parkway and also the high school access. In addition, we have the Ladies Island plan and its vision for this area. And so we want to make sure that the land use vision and the transportation improvements go hand in hand as this moves forward. And so what we are anticipating is to come back, I would say after the first of the year. One of the things we have to be mindful of are the city's mayoral elections. We don't really want to go to the city before that and kind of wait till the new mayor gets up to speed. And then so we anticipate coming back with a proposed scope and then also some ballpark estimates on costs. We're going to reach out to a few planning firms just to get some ideas, and we'll go from there. So.
Okay, any questions from anyone? Yes.
Not really a question, just want to say thank you for the amount of work that y'all are putting in. I know I've talked to Councilman McPhee, and we're all excited about it, so I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Just
you.
quickly, Rob, a lot
Councilman
of
Clark.
discussion on the Woods Bridge.
Yes, I mean, I think, and obviously, we're trying to figure out, because we foresee a problem in the future, and when that is, whether it's in 20 years, what's going to happen to the Woods Memorial Bridge. And so that did come into discussion today about whether that might be another effort, to look long-term, because then you're talking about, well, are we talking about, once again, a third bridge? How are we going to think long-term about the viability of the Woods Memorial Bridge? So. Yeah.
Was it out twice last week or just once?
I'm
I
not
don't know.
sure. I know
I
that one
don't-
morning, my daughter missed the bus, and there's this incredible stream of traffic coming over the McTier Bridge. I just, I was not aware, because I live in Port Royal, but it's amazing how much it disrupts the morning commute.
Morning traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, let's move on then. Thank you for the update. Number 8 is the Beaufort Conservation District Annual Report. Ms. Leslie, Miss Leslie, pronounce your last name for me so I can.
I'm actually Hillary Gallup.
Oh,
Leslie couldn't
Hillary
be here
Gallup.
today,
Okay.
but Miola is how you say her last
All right,
name.
Hillary Gallup, thank you.
Yeah.
This, and we, just for council's benefit, we get an annual update from the district, so this is it. Thanks.
All right. So I'm Hillary Gallup. I'm the education coordinator for the Beaufort Soil and Water Conservation District. For those of you who might not be familiar, let's see, the arrow? Maybe? That's okay. So every county in South Carolina, and just about every county in America, has a conservation district. And we, our Board of Commissioners, which is a volunteer board, they get together once a month and we figure out how to tackle the conservation issues in our area. Our board is made up of two appointed chair and vice chair, which they were just awarded 40 years of service. Our chair, Alan Ulmer, and then our vice chair, Claude McLeod. He was just awarded 35 years of service, so we're very proud of them for sticking with us for so long. And they are the two closest with the suspenders and the khaki shirt on. And then the rest of our commissioners are elected. And then we've got 4 part-time employees. So all of us at the district are either volunteer or part-time. So we do our best with the time and the resources that we have. Let's see. So we are also the local USDA NRCS partner. So what that means is that when there is federal funding for our local landowners and farmers, we are kind of the middleman that connects our local landowners and farmers with our NRCS agent. So we do not have an office for NRCS in Beaufort County. We are the ones that connect them and then get them the space to meet or try to answer any questions that they have if they can't get in touch with the NRCS agent right away. For FY23, our Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP, as you will see it in a lot of literature, payouts totaled $3,438. And then for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which is EQIP, those payouts totaled $30,777.42. And there's just a picture of a high tunnel as an example of what some of that EQIP money can go to for our farmers. In March of last year, the Nature Conservancy, we entered into a partnership with them to provide an assessment of the needs of the challenges for our Beaufort County farmers. So they provide us grant funding to hire a field agent to perform in-person surveys with farmers. And I am reading my script here because this is a little bit outside of what I typically do for the district. So this is a one-year position that reports quarterly back to the Nature Conservancy of South Carolina with his assessment findings. And our board was asked to hire this person because we are the ones in the community that hopefully know the right person for the job. So Walter Mack is who we hired. He is a very well-known farmer on St. Helena with many connections, and he has been working very, very hard to get this information. So what the Nature Conservancy is looking for, they want to know what the farmers have planned, or if they even have an idea of what they want to do with their regenerative farming practices, their current participation and awareness of conservation programs like CSP, like EQIP, challenges related to climate change, because that is something very real happening in our county, and interest in participating in programs in economic markets. This is my area. So as the education coordinator, we also focus on environmental education. So many years ago, our board decided one of the best ways to tackle conservation in Beaufort County is through education. Every conservation district decides how they want to do that differently. Beaufort County has always really used a lot of that time and resources for education. So this past year, we were able to get into 133 classrooms, and we were able to make contact with 3,390 students and adults throughout Beaufort County. We're already on track to pass that number for this next fiscal year. And these are just a couple of photos of our 3 most popular programs. So what we do is we take conservation programs into the classroom. So our soil tunnel is actually one of my favorites. We set up folding tables in the classroom, throw some sheets over them, but the sheets are painted with what you're gonna find underground. So we're teaching these kids, like, yes, okay, we can see what's above us because we live above ground, right? But what's underneath us? What crops are growing underneath us? What critters are living underground? And a big thing is what's underneath our houses. So many of our homes here in Beaufort County are still on septic and a well. So we do talk about that, and we obviously drive home that how fortunate we are that we get to flush our toilets and never think about it again. So that's something that's part of the conservation education that we're providing to these kids. We're also the other part of the soil tunnel program. We bring in live worms and talk about the importance of healthy worms in our soils, and most of them end up touching them and looking at them with a microscope, which is a pretty cool experience for them. That's for kindergarten through 2nd grade. Our Enviroscape goes up in age a little bit. We can obviously do it with kindergarten, but middle schoolers really love this one. It's an example of a watershed and what happens when you pollute your watershed. So we use food products. Green Kool-Aid as fertilizer, red Kool-Aid as pesticides. We talk about the different pollutants we have in our community, and then what happens when it rains. And then we relate it all back to our stormwater runoff. Many of them don't know that the cypress wetlands are dug for stormwater runoff. So we talk about these different things in the community. All of our programs, we're not trying to teach kids what to think, we're trying to teach them how to think. So we're just trying to lead them into asking more questions. And then our snake program, obviously, if you have a live animal, you're going to be the most popular one in the room. And we really try to focus on teaching these kids about the difference between venomous versus non-venomous snakes, because that's a really important skill to have here in the Low Country. And that is one of my favorite pictures as well. He was shocked that he even touched this snake, but then I got him to hold it. And we don't always make kids give them the opportunity to hold the snake in class. But if they're calm and it's the right circumstances, we'll absolutely give them the opportunity. We also host Eco Camp every year. So this past year was our 32nd year hosting Eco Camp as a conservation district. We have a different theme every year. There is no Earth without art was last year's theme. So every science lesson had a little bit of an art project to go with it. That first photo is one of our campers dissecting an owl pellet. So for those of you who don't know, owls swallow their food whole. They can't digest everything, so they have to spit it back up. And that's what those kids got to dissect to see what kind of bones, maybe feathers they could find in it. And then they could glue them to make a new creature if they wanted to. Clemson Extension is a huge partner of ours. They always jump in for Eco Camp. That middle photo, they did a lesson on marsh ecology and then taught the kids how to paint a marsh scene with watercolor. The Gullah Co-op is another big partner of ours. They came in and did a little lesson on farming in the Low Country, and then the kids made corn husk dolls. Our other partnerships, we have many of them, and some of you got the packet, and all of our partnerships are on that last page. We were really proud to sponsor a high school team for the Envirothon competition this past year. We sponsored Battery Creek. So this competition tests students on their knowledge of aquatics, wildlife, soils, and forestry. It's put on by DNR. We're hoping to sponsor a second team this year. We're also active mentors in the Green Steps program, which is a South Carolina program to give schools awards for their sustainability efforts. So we've been mentoring Bluffton Middle School for the past few years. They got an award this past year. And we've also brought on 3 more schools. So we're now mentoring St. Helena Elementary, Whale Branch Middle, and also Low Country Montessori. Low Country Master Naturalist is also a huge partner of ours that we're so thankful for. So I had the opportunity to take the course this past year, which is amazing. If any of you ever get the opportunity or have done it, it's really, really cool. But also it is a resource not only for our educators, but also for volunteers. So like I said, we are part-time or a volunteer organization. So when we put on these things like Eco Camp for the community, we run off of volunteers. Half of my Eco Camp counselors were volunteers from Master Naturalist this past year. We've also adopted the Broad River at the Sands Beach through Adopt a Stream, which is a South Carolina program. It's a citizen science program to monitor water quality. And I think that is all that I have for y'all.
Well, thank you. We have any questions or comments from the committee?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're one of my favorite group to come before us, because I love what y'all do. Particularly when you start, addressing education and the environment and how it really works together. One of the things that I always said is that there's more life underneath the ground than is above the ground. There's a lot of activities happening down there that's so valuable that we need to protect and preserve and stuff. The only comment I'm gonna make is that I know you did this with the snakes. I know you told the kids this is a non-poisonous snake, and they could touch it. But in the artwork, the display, if you would put non-poisonous snakes, it would really, because if a child sees this and they see a snake out there, they think they can go touch it, but that's a non-poisonous snake versus a venomous snake and stuff. And the other comment I just make, just for council, is that one of the pictures you had on the Roy Green has a greenhouse or a hoop house, and he needed electricity, etc. He's now producing that blue blackberries on his farm, and that was actually blackberry what we saw. But he had a difficult time and that's the county, I'm just saying this to the county right now, getting electricity for his wells, et cetera, because the county thought that he was actually putting a trailer or another house there, which was not zoned for it, but it was really agriculture. So, I think the county needs to try to protect agriculture as much as we can and make it much easier and stuff. But I appreciate what all y'all say and do. Thank you.
Thank you. And to circle back on the snakes. So we make it really clear in our programs, we don't want these kids running outside and grabbing snakes.
No, I know you did that. But it's a picture that was there and it just said snakes.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you put non-poisonous, or non-venomous or whatever.
I'll be sure to do that next time.
that's all.
Thank you.
Ms. Gallops, we really appreciate what your organization does, and through y'all, we have done a lot of partnering for the Rural and Critical Lands Program with the grants that you brought dollars to the table for some of the projects. And your education program in the schools is invaluable. My daughter and my grandchild is on, and I know this is something that he was very interested in.
Certainly. Well, just prior to this meeting, we held a workforce housing workshop. During that meeting, we invited the Regional Housing Trust, our Regional Housing Trust Fund to come and make a presentation for us, as well as Jeremy Cook from Ainsworth Sinclair Boyd, who talked about some funding options for us. We, of course, staff went and looked at this specifically to see what kind of things they were available to us. One of the things that we were concerned about was use of our public dollars. And in this way, it is understood that we have fund balance available. We can budget funds for specific purposes for affordable housing, not only for the Coastal Community Development Corporation, but for other affordable or workforce housing programs as well. So I can talk briefly about some funds that we have available. So we have, in our fund balance right now is right around $60 million, 30% of our total budget expense that we're required to keep is about $40 million. So it leaves us $20 million-ish in our fund balance that's available. Part of that fund balance, we dug a little deeper into that fund balance that's there. There's ARPA funds interest that we earned last year, which is a little more than $1.2 million, makes up part of that fund balance. So for instance, so if we want to dig a little deeper into what makes up that fund balance, we can have some more discussion about that. There's some unspent ATAX and HTAX dollars in there as well. That becomes a little more complex if we want to use that towards one of these programs. Mr. Cook, during the workshop, talked about geo bonding. So right now, the county has still available capacity, which keeps us at 8% or below, of $96 million of geo bond capacity. That's an option that council has. Our local ATAX averages about $2.5 million a year. The new act allows us to spend or use 15% of that ATAX dollars towards workforce and affordable housing programs. This year, it's about $388,000 to use to that money. Our state ATAX averages about $1.5 million. Right now, those state ATAX applications are in review. Actually, we begin interviews with those applicants tomorrow. Mr. Cook talked about TIF districts as an option for us. TIF districts would be easiest used for the county as a way of improving infrastructure development in those areas. Another opportunity for us is to, of course, budget for these kind of things, to purchase land and then do some deed restrictions or other opportunities and provide these organizations with the land with which to develop their projects, if that's available. Of course, the Coastal Community Development Corporation, they presented to us a few times, and their organization is looking for existing properties that are for sale that they would purchase and rehab and then reuse for affordable or workforce housing properties or opportunities. Of course, using our Regional Housing Trust Fund is also a great option. So we would encourage all folks or all entities seeking funding to apply to the Regional Housing Trust Fund and go through their process to see if we can better leverage the dollars that are there. The Regional Housing Trust Fund has opportunities to take a $1 and make them into $2. So that is another great advantage to us. That was just a little brief of what we heard earlier. If you have any questions for me, anything else I can help answer.
Any questions?
Mr. Cook is still in the room as well. Just in case you get too complicated for me, he's still hiding here.
This is simple.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about, in presentation, Mr. Cook talked about the county being so diverse. And
Yes, sir.
different projects, program as it relates to affordable housing. I want to just ask you one quick question. Is there a possibility in rural communities where if the county went in and sort of purchased the land, working with a group like the Habitat for Humanity in developing on a slow process now? That, you can't do that in Bluffton because you need a lot of houses right away. But in a community like St. Helena or Dale, where Habitat for Humanity could actually work with the county in developing a little community of some sort for people, like Mr. Cunningham said, who would have a chance to own that property. Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I would have to do some research and ask some questions specifically for Habitat, but as far as the county purchasing land and using that land with a development agreement to leverage developers or workforce housing developers to decrease their cost to do that, yes, that is absolutely something that, a model that we would look for.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
All right, thanks so much.
I think Mr. Cook described it best. For those of you that weren't here earlier, it's a buffet, and we just need to figure out what all we want on our buffet.
Absolutely.
As
Thanks so
tools.
much.
Okay, all right. Okay, next is discussion regarding possible development moratorium and current zoning along Highway 170. This had come up before, and Mr. Atkinson is going to talk about that. And Rob, Mr. Merchant? Oh, both of you together, right? Just for background, Jasper County did a 6-month moratorium, correct? Along Highway 170, primarily.
9 months.
Or was it countywide?
Well, it was along 170 and extended west to 95 and goes up to Ridgeland, so
It's a 6-month moratorium.
Yeah.
Okay. Floor's yours.
I have a little map to start out with, kind of to
Okay.
give you some context, and apologize for the quality, but it's combining both Beaufort and Jasper maps together in, 2 different platforms. But I just wanted to provide, I guess, starting out, a little bit of framework for what's going on the Beaufort County side and what's going on the Jasper County side. So on this map, on the bottom is pretty much the intersection with 278 and 170, McGarvey's Corner. You have Sun City over there at the bottom. And then, you go north on 170, you hang right over by Oldfields, and then it proceeds to the bridge. So that just kind of gives you some background. And I guess what I wanted to do was talk about what the existing zoning is in that area and, kind of some initial staff thoughts about, what Jasper County did on their side with the moratorium and how that would, the appropriateness of that in Beaufort County. The zoning on that corridor is, for the most part, if you see it, it's different shades of green. So that's rural, T2 rural or T2 rural neighborhood. And then you have, it's a little bit hard to see here, but it's a kind of a pinkish speckled district, and that's existing PUDs. So along that corridor, starting from the bridge, you have Kalawasi and Spring Island. Spring Island is not a PUD, it's basically rurally zoned. Then you have Oldfield, Rivers End, Malin Bluff, River Oaks, River Bends, and Sun City. So you have a pattern on that corridor currently where you have existing PUDs, and then the remaining land is for the most part zoned T2 rural, which allows one dwelling unit per 3 acres. On the Jasper County side, one of the things that probably the major thing that their moratorium does is it limits subdivision of land beyond a minor subdivision, and in their code, that's defined as 4 lots or less. So, currently, the moratorium would affect any subdivisions, and the area that is a dark green is the area covered by the moratorium. So on this map, it's everything in Jasper County outside of Hardyville and Ridgeland, except for some of those pockets or that patchwork quilt along 170 and over near Hardyville. They have the same issues we do with the multiple jurisdictions. So the area that they have proposed for the moratorium, or that they have the moratorium active in that green, almost all of that, with the exception of a PUD along 170 near the John Paul II, on that, that stretch of 170, is zoned, it's basically a rural conservation district. And their least dense district allows, at a minimum, 1 acre lots. So it's different than our rural in that, if you have, and there's some very large tracts along the 462 corridor, if you have, 500 acres, then, in a rural area, you could subdivide 500 lots. So the pressure that they're seeing for, runaway development, maybe even still low density, but enough that would start to change the character of the area, is a little greater than our rural zoning, which is 1 per 3. And what we're seeing along the 170 corridor is that when people are interested in developing, they come to council and request an upzoning. And, we've had a few of those, of course, in the last year or so. So, my recommendation as staff is that if we're looking at limiting growth on the 170 corridor, if we echoed what Jasper County did, I don't think it would be very effective, because most of the land is either already subdivided, in places like Malin Bluff, you can't really undo what's already been subdivided. And then the rural zoning, we're not seeing a lot of pressure to develop at that density. We're seeing people want to come forward and change the zoning. So I guess I wanted to start it out with that, that context in mind on that corridor. And
I did not realize that Jasper County was 1 house per acre, very different from our rural, our T2. So.
yeah.
Okay. All right, I would like to open it up for questions. Anyone? Or discussion? This is discussion. Any comments?
Yes. I'm not opposed to a moratorium, but if we're gonna be doing it, I think we need to have clearly defined parameters for what we want to accomplish. And what would be the objective? Obviously, I know slowing things down, but as far as rezoning, what would that look like? What would the work during the moratorium, what would that look like?
Well, to me, the best local example, and this is going back quite a bit, but the town of Hilton Head Island in the late 80s had a moratorium on development as they were constructing the Cross Island Expressway. So they had a clear goal, that, 278 was choked up on the island, that expressway was going to provide a lot of relief to that. And so they wanted to slow down development until that was opened. So I think, the best advice, and this is from a planner.
As it relates to upzonings, because you already control the keys to that lock. If collectively you don't want upzonings, don't approve upzonings. So if we do a 180-day moratorium, when you look at the process for what it takes to do that type of development, it would run concurrently, and then they would make the application at the end of the 180 days. And I think if you ran it much farther than that, you would run afoul of it having a specific reason with a specific time frame. So, you know, from staff's perspective, you already control this. The ball's in your court. If you don't want upzonings, you don't have to approve upzonings with or without a moratorium. Can you do it? Absolutely. Sure you can. Would it change anything? No, because you already control it. And I think the dynamic, as Rob said, between what Jasper County and what we've done, they have something that we don't, and that is large contiguous tracts of land that expand out beyond I-95 with a one-to-one by right. That's a very different scenario than what you have on our side of 170, which are sort of spread out, I'm going to say smaller pieces of land with a minimum zoning of 1 to 3. And when you look at development costs, we don't see any pressure on that end of the spectrum. I hope this makes sense.
Okay, Councilman Gunningham?
Thank you. I agree with you. Unless there's a specific reason for it, like a specific project on our hands that we need to do an absolute halt because we have to get through something, building a new bridge, widening 170, a new school being put in, whatever the variable might be. I just spent last week in Port Royal and they're discussing it right now. They have something big going on, talking about the ports, talking about they need to figure things out before they decide if they're going to expand Port Royal or not. So it's something that's on the table. By the way, congratulations, Kevin Phillips.
Yes.
Just won his mayor race there. So I do understand the logic. The majority of this council is big, and every single one of us ran on slowing down growth and workforce housing. So it's just going to be a matter of, I mean, we're together for another year. Anything could happen after that, and then 2 years after that. But are we going to say no to the upzoning? Like we just had 2 pieces of property in this section in the last year have come up for upzoning, and both times, you know, they got turned down. So the question is, if we're going to push for a moratorium, it's got to be for a specific reason, redoing 170 or Argent Road or whatever the area might be. But at just some point, we have to take accountability ourselves on council to say, if we're going to slow down growth, then we need to put our money where our mouth is and slow down growth and vote it down. And that's got to be the biggest thing. I mean, sometimes it comes off harsh. I know I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I've put my foot in my mouth more times than once, but ultimately that's the goal, is to slow down growth so we can take care of our schools, fire, EMS, and the roads. And as long as we keep voting no, we're doing more work than this moratorium would do. And that should fall on us as the ones that got voted. So I agree with you, unless I don't really have any interest in it specifically in this area until we're saying we're going to redo this entire corridor, or Port Royal's focusing on that, or like you use the example of Hilton Head.
Yeah, and I will say, and I think if I'm wrong, Tom, speak up, but even if you did put a moratorium in place, if an annexation took place, it wouldn't prevent that, and it would do nothing to stand in the way of an annexation.
And I would hope Jasper
Yeah,
and
it would not.
Hardyville, who are trying to accomplish the same goal as us, wouldn't accept that annexation.
Sure, so staff, we're not trying to pick a side, right? We just want to give you the facts and sort of give you the landscape, literally, as far as the zoning is concerned, so that you can make an informed
And
decision.
that was the purpose of the
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
agenda items. Everyone could talk about it. Staff, yeah, just give us the facts.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Chairman, thank you. For all that we've heard the last number of months and why many of us are up here now, was for a moratorium or slow growth. So I would be in supporting that to help, to support Jasper and others. The people that we represent, I think it would show them a big deal that we're serious about slowing growth. Whether you say we vote for it or not, that's how you're thinking today. What about tomorrow? So if we have an opportunity to support the people, let's say infrastructure is getting hammered, the schools can't keep up with the growth, let's support them in showing that we're going to do this. And if it has to go 360 days, whatever it is, we can extend it at that point. But let's show support for the community that has elected us. That's just my opinion.
I think going back to the first point, though, we have better tools than Jasper County does in place already. With the T2 zoning is more stringent than the 1 per acre. And, you know, they are doing what they can do at this period of time, but
Absolutely.
personally, I don't think we have a strong enough reason to do a moratorium. We just stand strong in what we've done recently in zoning decisions.
And I applaud Jasper County, but let's not also forget that Jasper County had no problem approving the other side of Sun City that we're stuck dealing with in Beaufort County. So I understand it looks.
City of Hardyville, City of
That's
Hardyville.
Hardyville, correct. So we're still dealing with that, so there is more history to it. But this is the council here today and the council now, and we just gotta put our foot in the ground at some point and say enough is enough.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes,
So as Tom talked, Councilman Reese, it's more, that would be more of a perception to the community that we're gonna slow the growth. But we can vote no on upzoning. We get it, we got it. Nothing we could do about Hardyville. They are exploding as we speak. They match your shirt. And the issue here is 170, why I brought it up, is traffic. And if I hear Jared Freilich talk about one more time the triangle, here it is, 170, 462, 278. This part of traffic, anybody that comes up it knows this is horrible. Horrible, horrible. And he has a short-term solution, medium-term, and long-term solution. So that's not gonna get fixed. And to me, that's an important problem. But if we just hold to no upzoning, we'll have to do that.
any other comments? Yes,
Madam
Councilor
Chairman.
Glover?
And I agree with Tab that traffic is an issue. We can do hold fast to our zoning at this time, not allowing for any upgrowths, but it doesn't stop Jasper County, Hardyville from continuing. And I guess my question really is, do we maintain a good relationship with Jasper County, Hardyville about zoning and the impact it may have on the infrastructure? And that's 278 Argent Boulevard, 170. I mean, we can stop it on our side, but if they don't do it on their side, I mean, it becomes a nightmare.
So I can definitively say, yes, we have very good working relationships with all of the municipalities. And this has been an ongoing issue. I'm in my 21st year. It's been going on a long time. So if you look at where the line stops, it's at the county boundary. I think the growth boundaries work. I think that was collaborative. So yeah, we do have a very good working relationship with all of our municipalities.
Yeah, and so when I see all that greenness there in Jasper County, that's all wood right now, that's frightening, but that's me. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Have we coordinated with Jasper County during their moratorium to see if we can line up the zoning along that area between Jasper and Hardyville? And
It's a good idea.
Not that I know
No, but have we
of, not that I know of. You want to address that, Rob? Thank you.
We do have a growth committee of SoLoco that they set up last summer, and Alice Howard has been to those meetings. But one of the things that we're doing, we're currently working on a existing growth map so that we can get a handle on all the development we've approved and kind of show visually where those are, so we could then begin to look at what capacity we need for future growth and where can we draw those boundaries. So we're hoping that this work through SoLoco, that we can kind of work through that committee to get this adopted locally. But so we're
Or
hoping.
have agreement to
Yeah.
work on it. That was a major step, was have agreement to even look at it, I think.
Yes,
So that was
yeah.
good. Okay, I
I
think.
have one more.
One
I'm
more
sorry.
and then we'll go on.
So Hardyville, up Argent Boulevard's 9,200 homes, 9,500, whatever they're gonna build there. It's an extreme amount of homes. And Argent Boulevard's just a death trap, and we all know this is happening because it's part of the triangle. So, there is more land to be developed there. And I can tell you, the developers are chomping at the bit to continue in Hardyville. I don't know what your relationship is with Hardyville, but they need to clamp it down a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that
Yeah.
other than to say it because it's impacting everybody right around there.
Yeah, and I think what we're dealing with is previously approved and entitled development. And, so that conversation about, it takes a lot to go backwards on that.
Madam Chair, and I'll say, for your point earlier, you were talking about this is a big education purpose for us and people as well. I know the map just dropped off, but notice you're fine. You notice we've had 2 zoning requests on our side where Jasper's at least putting their foot down and saying they're gonna stop it, and I think we voiced that we're in the same position. We might not have put something in place, but this council has said that we're in the same boat. It's just a matter of us holding to that.
And we have another avenue too of green space, even though willing landowners, if they're out of the county and they're willing, we could take another step that we didn't have before. Okay, let's go on. We've got 2 more items on the agenda. Number 11 is recommend approval of an ordinance for a zoning map amendment, rezoning request for 57 acres at 1, 2, 3, and 4 Bennett Point Drive from planned unit development to T2 rural. And Mr. Merchant's going to brief that. And I'll remind the audience, there was a typo and the correct ordinance is on the screen now, referring to the correct location and name of the location.
Yeah, and I apologize for that.
No problem.
So in light of the previous discussion, I would say this is the kind of rezoning application that maybe the council would prefer to see. But what we have is 57 acres. This is over in northern Ladies Island, north of the Pleasant Point actually, it's part of the Pleasant Point Plan Unit Development. There are 4 tracts that make up 57 acres. That were originally platted and approved for 179 single-family lots. But the owners of these properties now have a conservation easement on the property. So that conservation easement limits it to 4 houses on 4 lots. And so the owners have approached the planning department about changing the zoning so that it matches more of the character and future land use of that property versus the current PUD zoning. The conservation easement goes with the property. So it's not that this rezoning is necessary to preserve this land, but it definitely is choosing a zoning district that is compatible with the character and the future development of this area. And I would say also from a housekeeping standpoint, I'm a very visual person. So to have a map and have the green reflect what is rural or what is preserved works a lot better than to have a PUD that somebody in the future might look at that and want to know what's going on there and why that hasn't been platted. So, I think that this is a good change in the map, and it reflects our land use policy in that part of Ladies Island. And if you have any questions, I could answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
The existing zoning is 5 pieces of property, but 4 are going to be recommended to be rezoned? And the 1 will remain that way, correct? Not all 57 acres are going to be rezoned?
That is a good question. I'm thinking that one in the middle is actually
Separate piece of property.
it's a golf course. Okay.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's, so
Okay.
that'll never be developed.
Gotcha. All right.
Oh, let's not say.
Well-
Yeah, don't say that.
Is there a need for a motion? We can't act on this today.
You choose 1-to-3 ratio, correct?
Correct.
Did you have a question, Councilman Glover? I couldn't.
No,
hear.
I
I'm
said,
sorry.
Can we act on this today or we gotta wait?
Well,
no,
this
we
would be a
could- Yeah,
recommendation
it's
to go to
recommendation
full
to full
council.
council, and then it would go in December's meeting.
I so move. Anytime
Okay.
we down zone,
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay.
Second. Did you get who did the second? Okay. Okay. Without objection, any discussion?
No.
Without objection?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I am sorry. I should have mentioned this.
Mm-hmm.
Is the AIS. It will indicate that first, you make the motion to approve or deny or whatever your choices are under the AIS. But then you have to articulate the reason why you're making that motion. And if you look here, if you look here on attachment A, it identifies the 1 through 9. So you need to make the motion and you need to say, I move because it's consistent with and furthers the goals of the comp plan. It's is not in conflict with the development code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so, Councilman Glover, will you withdraw your current motion and
Or just say
restate it?
because, or just say you move to approve it because of whatever reasons you choose on the 1 through 9 that are listed on attachment A.
I do want to make that motion, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. I just need to find out where the 1 through 9 is.
It's page
Oh, okay.
10.
Can we use one of the recommendations that's in the bottom there listed currently?
Just 1 and 2.
It's-
Should I use
on
all-
page 10.
All 9, or should I,
Use 1 and 2 maybe. 1 and 2.
It's on the screen, Mr. Glover.
okay.
There you go.
Oh, I got it right here and stuff. I do motion that we, downzone, the recommend, a motion that we accept the recommendation, that's presented to us, in consistence with, items 1 and 2, which is in consistence with and further the goals and policy of the comprehensive plan and the purpose of this development code. In the areas of new development, a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan shall be considered to meet the standards below unless compelling with evidence demonstrates the proposed amendment would threaten the public health, safety, and welfare if the land subject to the amendment is classified to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And also, 2, which is not in conflict with any provision of this development code or the code of ordinance. Is that good enough?
Is that
Well, that's just 2 of the
2?
9, so.
Do you want me to read all
Well,
6?
I mean, if you
Or can we
find,
accept all 9 of it?
if you find that the application is consistent with those others, you can just articulate them kind of quickly.
Yeah, there you
You don't have to read them all, but you can say, for instance, it's not up on the screen now, I can't see it.
That's right. There it is.
Okay.
And
You could say that it, for instance, that it addresses a community need, if you believe that
it addresses the community needs,
compatible with existing and proposed uses, that's
compatible
number
with
5.
existing,
Right, so it's 1,
uses.
2.
Number 6, wouldn't adversely impact nearby lands, et cetera, right?
It would not adversely impact nearby lands. Anything else?
That's enough.
It's up to you, sir.
That's
Not
enough.
any
I want to make
adverse
sure the motion
impacts,
gets through. Yeah.
They don't get there.
no adverse impacts on natural environment.
Just say
8.
items.
That 2, which is number 8, will result in development that is adequately served by public facilities. I think that should do it all, Madam Chairman.
Okay,
You want me to second that? I'll second it.
okay, all right.
I got the easy part.
Councilman Bartholomew
everybody's like,
seconds
That
the
was a
motion.
mouthful, man.
David, I think you got me on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, without objection,
I would just like to say, I bet you he's regretting making that recommendation now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right, without objection, the motion passes. Thank you.
All right.
This is a good, all right, number 13 is the last thing before we adjourn. Just to remind the audience, we took off number 12. It will come back to us at another meeting. Number 13 is, the new number 12 is recommend approval of a resolution to adopt the Passive Parks Department's private business use policy, application, and fee schedule. Ms. Naggett will explain why we need to do this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Committee. Stephanie Najid, Passive Parks Department Director. This year has been an interesting one, exciting and also informative in that with the hiring of our Passive Parks naturalist and in her doing research on trying to develop our own environmental education program, we've come across a number of businesses that are advertising and utilizing passive park properties for their private use without getting prior approval or compensation to the county for use of public land. In discussions with the legal department, it was determined that private businesses should not be using public property without the proper approval liability insurance, business license, information, and compensation for the use of that property. So we've had activities such as eco tours, staged photography sessions. These are people who are coming to the properties and setting up sets. So they're bringing props, they're tying things to trees, they're occupying space that the public should be utilizing. And then also professional pop-up picnics, where again, they're bringing sets and decorations and things. These do not necessarily constitute an event that my current facility rental policy would apply to. These are smaller type situations, smaller amounts of time. They don't, they're not typically asking for food and alcohol and, use after hours, but they are still occupying space that the public is occupying, as well as potentially having negative impacts on the conservation values of the property, as well as with our growing department and environmental education program, they could be in conflict with our own staff doing our own activities on these passive park properties. So far for the last few months, I've been attempting to use the existing policy that I have in place, which is the only approved policy I have for rental of passive park properties, and that fee schedule. It has been a little bit challenging because it's not really suited for this particular type of use. So I took that policy and again, in coordination with the legal department, revised it to be specific to private businesses utilizing passive parks. So I've brought this forward as a way to potentially manage this type of use on passive park properties. However, you'll see there that the motions for options for council are to either approve as provided, as written, modify if there's discussion about the policy and any of the content within it, particularly if you have any comments about the fee schedule or timing, timeline, deadlines, that kind of thing. Or if you wanted to deny it and just say that private business doesn't have a place on passive parks. So there are various options for council to consider.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for questions before we entertain a motion.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
What would enforcement look like as far as, this is assuming that somebody's actually gonna do the application and go out there, or do we have enough people to actually enforce this provision?
In a manner. So my department is currently 3 staff, myself, my ranger, my naturalist. So of the parks that are open to the public, we do have cooperating agencies like the City of Beaufort, the Town of Bluffton, the Town of Hilton Head. So they also keep eyes on the properties that they manage for us in their jurisdictions. The naturalists and the ranger are on the other open properties that the county maintains full management over on a pretty regular basis, at least weekly. So we do have eyes on the property. We also have the environmental crimes unit with the sheriff's office. So anytime I have a problem on the passive parks that involves a legal issue, like an enforcement issue, then I have my contact with the environmental crimes unit. We report it to him, he comes out, we investigate. He has trespassed people before in the past where we've had problems with that. Illegal hunting is handled through our contacts with DNR, so we have had enforcement, through that. So there is a mechanism for it. I'm sure we get the word out. I've already been in touch with several businesses, some of whom are complying and some of whom are not very happy with me. But
Okay,
that's the
Councilor
way it
Cunningham.
goes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First one, BIC, you put event in quotation. What number of people qualifies it for it to be an event? Because I understand if someone's coming in doing a wedding and they're bringing in tents and the DJ after hours, like I understand that concept. So is there a number on that? Is there a certain amount of people?
There is not a certain amount of people. It really does depend on the intent and the request of the person filling out the application. So I have had applications for a 20-person wedding, but they're bringing in food, they're bringing in alcohol, they want to be there after hours. It's, decoration of the barn. There's
And we have policies in place for those type of events currently.
that is the existing facility rental application that I have, yes.
Okay, so I guess my, one other question, then a statement. What is the turnaround time on the answer for an application once filled out?
I usually turn it around within a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, this kind of worries me. I mean, we're using taxpayer dollars to purchase this property and create passive parks for the public to use it. The fact that a local business that's one photographer would have to file an application and pay $100 to do a photo session in a public park that they've already paid taxes on, it kind of worries me. I mean, they would have to pay up to $100 on, so they're already losing part of their revenue right off the rip just to use the location that somebody wants to use that they've already paid taxes on to purchase. And then secondly, our businesses are part of our tax base. They're the ones that pay our employees that can turn around, or our people that turn around to put money back into our economy, which is the money that we purchase these parks with. I support the big events. I support the big weddings and bringing in food and tents on stuff, but the small events like these, to be honest, I'm not really behind it. I think it should be open for the public to be able to use during the hours that we have provided open to the public.
Can I make a
Yes, sure.
comment on that? So the reason why it is a issue for me in the Passive Parks Department is the properties that are being used within my department's purview have been purchased primarily for conservation or cultural history values. So without being able to manage where the businesses are utilizing property, they could be hurting the conservation values that the property was purchased for. The secondary reason is because they are public properties. So they do belong to the public to be able to come out. We have also seen a number of visitors have told me personally that they don't feel welcome in a park when these businesses are there. They feel like they're interrupting or disrupting the business use. And to me, that's not the secondary reason. We didn't make the parks for businesses to use them. We made the parks for the public to feel welcome and to come out and enjoy the natural resources and conservation values of the land. And then also, we do have our naturalist who is going to be coming early next year with our environmental education program. And so if we end up with a group of 50 people coming out on an eco tour and our own 50 people out there at the same time, then those people are taking up the entire parking lot and utilizing a small space of like a small trail. So then you have multiple large groups doing the same thing and then also disrupting the public's use and creating an issue for conservation. So trying to take into account all of that. It's really just trying to manage the people that are there. And the photographers coming out that this would apply to are the people who are bringing props and sets, where we don't want them to tie signs to trees, tie blankets to trees, to tie to our existing structures, to block access. I did have one photographer actually set up, because she thought it was in the most appropriate location, at the actual access point to the public. So she was blocking the public from utilizing the park.
I understand a lot of the gray areas that you can run into. I just feel like some of those should be handled on an at-large basis. I mean, how are we to tell a group of people of Sun City that want to go out with a group of 20 people to go look at one of these that they can't go look at it that day unless they fill out an event form?
They can.
Thank
The
you.
problem is with the business going out there, they're charging people to utilize that park.
Yep.
This would be also applied to any of us that own a business want to take our employees out to go see it.
No.
No. If you charge
So-
your employees.
These are businesses who are setting up shop, making a profit, not using the park for recreation.
So, but how is that
Okay,
any
so
different
if
than us
you-
bringing 50 people out ourselves to do it and it running into the same time
Are
frame?
are
as
your
you?
employees paying you for you taking them out there?
No, I'm just talking.
Right, so that's different.
Scheduling was her biggest thing. that's still.
Okay, so let me sort of expand the scope of this. We're trying to get out ahead of a problem that we see coming. These are new parks. We have Okatee River Park that's about to open up, right, in the next year. Green space, $100 million. You've probably got 10 or 12 parks that are gonna come out of that. I can imagine if we open this up and go, it's free game, you can do whatever you want on these parks. You're gonna have fly fishing lessons, you're gonna have sports lessons, you're gonna have all sorts of things take place for profit. And they're gonna utilize these parks to do that. So we're trying to get out ahead of that. Photography's one example because that's what we know is going on right now. And literally on the website, the photographer's like, I'll be there from 11 to 4, and they set up a booth, and and people show up, and they come there, and they eat up the parking lot. They're not there to enjoy the park. They're there to have their picture taken because it's a cheap place for them to do business. So that's what we're trying to get out ahead of. And if we need to go back and refine this, we can most certainly do that. This is not an all or nothing proposition. We see this coming, we're already dealing with it, and it's going to get worse as we open more and more and more parks.
And also, I'd just like to add, 2 of the parks have nesting bald eagles. So we have to shut certain areas down, and this is one way to control that. Fort Fremont has archaeological resources that we have to protect. Also, it's kind of like a gate to me. It's another gate. If you own a business and you want to make money off of our parks, it's a way to be a gate. To me, it's a gatekeeper.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I get the concern, and I actually shared at first reading it, I shared a lot of his concerns about it, but after hearing from y'all, have y'all thought about, the event application makes sense. That's one date and time where you can do an application, get the permit, go ahead and do it. But with this, I think there's gonna be an enforcement issue with having to do an application every single time somebody wants to go out. Have we thought about doing a business license addition? So when you do your yearly business license, if you intend to use any of the passive parks, you just go ahead and pay a monetary fee up front on it, and then you get an attachment that you have to carry with you when you go. So that way enforcement issue, when they go out there, hey, where's your passive park business permit?
So that is something that has been brought up in the past and by another business is an annual fee. The problem with that for the management of the parks is there are land management activities that do occur on some of these that include hazardous conditions like prescribed fire or timber harvesting or vegetation control. And the last thing I would want to do is not know that there's somebody on the property bringing people and then not be able to get them out, or have advance notice of when they're going to be there. Because there's so much that I do that I have to schedule ahead of time. So part of the policy as it's written is if you are going to have routine visits, then you only have to submit one application and then give me your annual schedule. And then that way I can just plug it into my calendar so that as I do other management activities, I know how to plan around things.
Any other comments, questions?
May I address the enforcement real quick?
Yes.
I know we're running out of time. So we do a lot of different enforcement activities through my division. I can tell you that the primary way that we do that is through education. And 99.9% of the time, when you tell somebody that there is a rule in place and you explain politely why that rule is there, they comply with it. And dealing with the 0.01% of folks who are going to check an attitude and just do it despite, there are avenues to take care of those issues, and we are well equipped to do that.
Any other questions or comments? I need a motion, please. Yeah, I know. Thanks for
So moved.
keep me on track.
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, I have
And
a
I'll make the
motion.
second, that's fine, but to add on that discussion, if I may,
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, and so we have a second.
I'll be brief, I promise.
Okay.
Because we still have to vote on it again at county council. I'm it's not saying I don't like the idea, I just think there's a lot of gray area that can create a lot of conflict. I understand if businesses are going in and making a profit, or if they're scheduling events or big groups, but it's still a system that stops groups from the public would have to file for this same thing. And they would have to, if you're saying that it's for safety reasons, which you listed 2 of them, and a group from Sun City decided to go with 20 people, you wouldn't know they were there without this application. So you're saying that they would have to file it if they would want to do it, for you to know for safety reasons if they're there. That's some things that are just uncontrollable. I understand red tape and why we have to do it for protection, but sometimes it's, are we just making more red tape for more red tape?
There
So
are,
that's-
yes.
That's just some of my concerns of the areas I'd like for us to have explanations and clean up before this comes to final reading.
Okay, we'll
But
have
the
a,
overwhelming concern right now is that the passive parks are being used for profit, which that wasn't our intent.
I agree.
Okay.
we're too beautiful a place and people are, yeah. Okay, so we have a motion, like roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Dawson,
Yes.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Yes.
Councilmember Tavernick,
Yes.
Councilmember McEllen,
Councilman McClellan?
he's coming.
Larry said yes.
You're
Okay.
on mute.
He's trying to unmute.
Read his lips. Thumbs up.
Okay, yes,
That's a
got it.
yes.
Councilmember Bartholomew,
No, as it's currently written.
Councilmember Reeds,
Yes.
Council Chair Passament,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
No.
Committee Chair Glover,
Vice Chair?
Oh, yes.
Vice Chair Glover,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Committee Chair Howard.
Yes,
The motion passes.
all right. The meeting of the Community Services and Land Use Committee is now adjourned. Thank you.
Start back with Sun City going there.